Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. In this video I'll be ranking all the level 4 spells in Baldur's Gate 3, including the newest spell, the Staggering Smite, which was added in patch 8, and we'll dive right in just starting with this spell here. Now, this is an interesting one because psychic damage is so powerful due to the Resonant Stone, which you can get in Act 2, which gives the Steeped in Bliss condition, doubling all psychic damage, which makes it actually a very deadly option because normally we only have the Wrathful Smite here, which even while upcasted only does an additional 1d6 of psychic damage, where this does 4d6. When that 4d6 is double, that's obviously more like an 8d6, which is quite a bit of damage, paired with the new Shadowblade spell, which you can literally get a 4d8 of psychic damage from this weapon here, and pair that with a 4d6, you are putting out a lot of damage with that single attack. So you can see there, it's upwards of 64 damage, which is doubled, so it's 128 damage on a single attack. Now, the big downside to this, obviously, is it does use up your bonus action and your concentration, so you can't use Hunger of Hadar and then follow up with one of these attacks. So that obviously does have some downsides. The stagger condition means the target can take reactions. This is more likely to miss, although it is a little different. Yeah, it pretty much one-shots anybody, though. We'll try that again, doing another Staggering Smite. It oftentimes will one-shot people, because yeah, 58 plus 26 damage, it hits extremely hard. Well, that was awkward, but yeah, you see there, the stagger doesn't really do a whole lot extra, just makes the target not take reactions. Overall, I think this is actually a pretty powerful. If you want burst damage, this is going to be the highest way to get that. It just, in essence, adds a 46 of damage. I don't think that's worth a level 5 spell slot or level 4 spell slot. However, if you wanted to do a massive amount of damage on a single attack, this is the way to do it. So I'd have to say this is a possibly B tier. Big downsides obviously being the bonus action. It requires a level 4 spell slot for essentially not a level 4 smite, as normal smites are 40. It would be a 48. But psychic damage, just being the powerhouse damage type that it is due to the Resonant Stone, makes this really strong. So yeah, B tier. Next up, we have the Banishment spell, which temporarily banishes a target to another plane of existence for 2 turns. This does require a level 4 spell slot. Now, it did get a little bit of a nerf because at level 3, the Arcane Archer Fighter gets this spell. So yeah, you can literally get this much quicker than making yourself level 7. You literally just have to be level 3, and the Banishing Shot from the Arcane Archer is obviously a lot better than this one. Normally, Banishment's not too bad. The Banishing Smites are pretty nice, especially if you go higher. If you take like the Hexblade Warlock or a Sword Bard, or really any Bard, they get the Banishing Smite spell, which does an additional 4d8 or 5d8 of damage, whereas this just banishes the target to another plane of existence. I should mention it does 5d10, but it does use your bonus action and your concentration to be able to do the Banishing Smite, but that's still pretty high damage. Now, I do think the Arcane Archer actually ended up nerfing this quite a bit because an Archer, when you hit level 5, you can do 2 banishments per attack. So if you have action surge, it's 4 banishing arrows, which does outperform this one here, only being able to select 1 or 2 targets here, depending on the spell level that you if you upcast it or lose a level 4 version, you can only do it on 1 target. So yeah, I do think that, honestly, it does lose a little bit of its edge because there's a much better way to use Banishing Shots with the Arcane Archer, and even the Hexblade now gets the Banishing Smite, which does additional 5d10 of damage as well. So I actually think the Banishing Arrow, or the Banishment condition itself is really good, but Banishing as a spell, there's better options. Literally, level 3 Banishing Shot from the Arcane Archer. Now, speaking of spells that got nerfed, we actually have one here that got buffed up with Blight. Now, the reason that Blight got a buff is the Death Domain Cleric, which actually gets this at level 7 as part of their domain spells. The level 6 Death Cleric actually gets their Inescapable Destruction, ignoring resistance to necrotic damage. This spell here is actually kind of funny because the plants that take maximum damage from this spell are actually resistant to necrotic damage, so that will override that. And yeah, this spell itself is possibly the most powerful single target necrotic damage spell in the game, but it's not really that great in all honesty. Like, we'll show it off there. Okay spell in general. It does that 8d8 necrotic, and then if you make it to level 5 spell slot, it does 98. I would not recommend upcasting this as it doesn't have good value per upcasting. This also does not affect undead or constructs. So in Act 3, you're fighting a lot of constructs, but also a decent bit of undead. So yeah, despite being it's kind of weird. It benefited heavily from the Death Domain Cleric. You can also learn this from scrolls. So if you went 6 levels of the Death Domain Cleric, 6 levels of Necromancer Wizard or Blade Singing Wizard, this can be a decent choice for spells as you'll ignore the resistances, but it does have a lot of, necrotic's one of the most resisted damage types. I'd have to say this is a B tier. Obviously, Staggering Smite being a pretty powerful spell is a little bit better. But next we got Confusion spell. I actually think that this is actually pretty powerful. It does have an upcast ability, so whenever you cast at a higher level, you see there, that's a massive radius for a level 5 spell slot. Another nice thing about this is it does not affect your teammates, so you can put this in a large area. Confusion is an underrated spell. I've had arguments with people on YouTube in the past about how this spell is garbage. I think it's good, actually, because it has a 1 in 10 chance of the target doing its normal action per turn. So whenever you cast Confusion, they're likely going to either walk around randomly or attack one of their closest teammates, which is actually really good. This is an enchantment spell, so if you have the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, you can cast this as a bonus action after doing weapon attacks. So the Sword Bard, the Paladin kind of combo there is extremely powerful for that reason. I do think Confusion is a spell that gets underrated quite a bit because, yeah, I see the argument that, hey, you can cast this spell and then they can still do their normal turn, but it's a 1 in 10 chance, so you actually have a good chance of them not doing something that's going to be detrimental to your team for 3 whole turns. And the fact that it is a huge area of effect, it's almost like the crowd controls version of Fireball. So I personally like Confusion. I know there's some people that don't really like it, but I think it's a good spell overall. The amount of crowd control that you can get out of one single spell slot is massive, and it can oftentimes help out your team because they'll end up attacking teammates. Unlike some of the other level 4 spells that we have here, I think this is an A tier pick. It is very effective in a variety of different situations. Next up, we got Dimension Door. So this can teleport you and an ally up to a place that you can see. The ally cannot be larger than medium, so you can't really use it on a giant barbarian, and doesn't actually get any benefits from upcasting. So you have to select someone that is in your close little radius here. So you take them there, and then boom, let's go take Shadowheart to her parents. You can do that with this spell. So booyah, we took her over there. Yeah, it's cool. Does have some instances, especially in the Iron Throne. This is where this spell truly does shine. It's like Misty Step, but you can do, it does take your full action, but you can move someone around, and I think in itself that can be especially useful in certain missions, like, again, Iron Throne. This is where this spell really shines. There's also the level 6 spell, the Dimension Gate, which you can teleport your entire team and just run through them freely. This is more so just a single spell that takes you through the Dimension Door there. I think it's a good spell, but I don't think it's as game changer as some of the other ones. Like, could be low A tier to high B tier. I might just, yeah, put her somewhere in the B tier. I think that if you have it, it's better to have your team members use Misty Steps rather than eat up your full action on this to move a target. If you can get, there's actually a lot of items. There's a necklace early game. There's also the Disintegrating Nightwalker's boots that come with a Misty Step. So you can get lots of sources of Misty Step for characters that don't normally get Misty Step. Plus, Get the Yankees will also have it. So I love Misty Step. I think Dimension Door is a decent spell, so that's why I said it in the B tier, but it's more so you'll want it for the Iron Throne, and then outside of that, there's other instances like the Mercule fight in Act 2 where it's nice, but overall I don't think it's that great of a spell outside of those instances because, again, Misty Step exists for level 2 spell slot and a bonus action versus an action. Next up, we got the Phantasmal Killer. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, level 3 spells are much better than level 4 spells. Level 4 has a few shining stars here, which we'll get to, but Phantasmal Killer is meh. It does delayed damage. It does psychic too, which is nice, but you have to be close to the target for that Steeped in Bliss to actually apply. So you do have to get close if you're going to use this, and this is a ranged spell that can go up to 18 meters. So haunt a creature with its worst nightmares. It takes 5 to 15 psychic damage per turn, cannot move, and has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. This is the upcasted version, does normally 4d10 of damage. So with this, yeah, it's nice to be able to deal the damage over time. So we applied the Phantasmal Killer there. Cool animations. He's haunted by it. We have to hold our concentration for him to continually keep taking the damage. But you see there with the Steeped in Bliss, actually taking quite a bit of damage. So we'll take that off just because, yeah, 4d10, eventually 5d10 if you get a level 5 spell slot is quite a bit of damage. Disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls is also quite nice. I think it's a decent spell overall, but I don't like the fact that you have to wait a turn for the combat or the damage to be taken. It's great against more difficult boss type enemies, and giving them disadvantage on their ability checks is nice. There's a pretty cool use of the frightened condition though. If a target is knocked prone, it basically just makes them skip their turn. It does have a wisdom save too, so that's a save that is sometimes resisted, but nice thing is the Resonance Stone actually gives targets disadvantage on their saving throws against mental spells, so you're more likely to land it. But one thing that I think kind of works against this is how quick combat is in Baldur's Gate 3, because typically you're going to end combat in a couple turns. If you can put something together, it's going to be obviously powerful. This delays the damage that applies to the enemy, which obviously is not that great in a game that incentivizes you to take advantage of your action as much as possible to get the targets off the board quicker. So my thoughts are, it's okay. It's a decent spell overall if you want to use it, but I wouldn't say it's the meta by any means, and I would actually put this somewhere in the B tier. With the Resonance Stone, this is really good. If you don't have the Resonance Stone, there's better options. Next is Dominate Beast. Now, this one is kind of wonky. Every time the beast takes damage, it does a wisdom saving throw against your domination. You can basically overcome a beast, kind of similar to some of the other spells that like Planar Binding or Dominate Person. It's okay, I guess. I don't ever find that there's many instances where Dominate Beast is going to be a spell that you're going to love using. It's just an okay spell slot. I would even say this is one that I just never end up using because there's no instances where, you know, this is going to be that great. It does last for 10 turns. It's a wisdom save. They have to keep making wisdom saves every time they get damaged. Yeah, it doesn't always end up working out that well. I'd have to say D to C. I might even just put it in the D tier. For D for Dominate Beast, it's just not as good as some of the other ones. Like we have next, Greater Invisibility. Turning creature invisible. Attacks against it have disadvantage. It attacks with advantage. Greater Invisibility works a little different from normal invisibility. It actually works a bit different in honor mode as well. So basically, whenever you use Greater Invisibility and you attack, the difficulty challenge for that to break your stealth is 15. Now, outside of honor mode, that'll become 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, etc. It actually increases quadratically whenever you're in honor mode. So yeah, your subsequent attacks have a much higher chance of actually breaking your stealth. So yeah, it's great because you can go ahead here attacking from stealth, and sometimes you're gonna fail the stealth check. The best thing though is Pass Without Trace if you're able to get that spell on top, because you can apply Greater Invisibility on a different target. So if you have someone cast Greater Invisibility on you who's using Pass Without Trace, boosted up stealth from like Gloomstalker Ranger and the Rogue, you're going to be pretty hard to break your stealth. So what you can do is then pop down an Arrow of Darkness, hide out in the darkness, shoot from it, and sometimes you're going to have a really good chance of just continually keep attacking until eventually your stealth does break, but you have to keep doing those stealth checks. I actually think that Greater Invisibility is super useful though, because on top of all of this, it's an illusion spell. So if you have the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, you can do your attacks and then turn yourself invisible at the end of the turn, and then sometimes you can run away with that. I actually think Greater Invisibility is, I would have to say, a high A tier, potentially S tier. We may reevaluate this by the end of the tier list, but I do think that it just has so many kind of cheesy ways to utilize its effectiveness by just making the target become unaware of what you're doing, because the stealth checks that you have to maintain. So yeah, I do think it is pretty strong overall, but not going to be the absolute meta, I guess. Certain instances it can be really good though. I might actually just put that down to the high A tier. It might be overhyping a little bit much, but it can help out quite a bit in honor mode. Next, we got some fun spells here. Now, fun fact, the Druid's actually the class that gets the most level 4 spell selection. So there's two different summons that come from the level 4 spell slot, with Minor Elemental being a pretty solid choice. The Azure, I think, is actually weakest choice. The Ice Method's my personal favorite, and the Mud Methods are also a good choice. So with the Ice Methods here, you can summon these in. They can do their Death Burst, which will do a big amount of ice damage or cold damage on the target. What's also nice, if you have the level 5 Conjure Elemental spell, the Water Elemental's main punch attack will apply Chilled, which makes the target take double cold damage, so then you can pop one of these down. The 2d8 Chromatic Orb is not great, but the Death Burst is a 4d6, which will end up being doubled, so potential 48 damage, or the Ice Breath also being a pretty good amount of damage too. Now, these things will also explode, so yeah, that's a big thing. You can actually hit multiple targets with an Ice Method. They're kind of annoying little freaks, but they actually work really well. So yeah, for a single spell slot, getting 2 targets that can eat up your attacks, like they can probably take around 2 attacks each. So that's 4 attacks for a level 4 spell slot. I think that's pretty good value. Now, they will get shredded if a target drops a fireball, and they seemingly like to target these. So my recommendation is to have these spread out a bit and have them kind of home in on the enemy from the side, and that's how they work best. And with the Mud Methods, they also have a little bit less health when only having 18 health points, but they also have their Death Burst here, which can restrain targets, which is nice. And then they also have the Mud Breath, which can restrain targets, and Mud Fling, which can throw mud, or their Muddy Claws. So yeah, these are good for crowd control because they'll make the enemy stick in the place. I definitely prefer the ice ones because ice surfaces are also great crowd control. And finally, the Azure, which is a fire damage focused summon. What's kind of funny is if you cast it in, it'll actually only delete one of your methods. So a little bit of a funny thing. If you have unlimited source of level 4 spell slots, you want to maximize. They have the Searing Smite. They got their Azure Warhammer, which isn't that crazy high in damage. They also have the Weakening Strike Backbreaker, which knocks targets prone, give weak grip. Can daze targets, which is nice because dazed targets will have a lesser chance of succeeding on wisdom saving throws. And they also can overheat themselves. I think the Azure is kind of the weakest choice here, but it's a cool one nonetheless. I like the Fiery Beard. And overall, I would actually have to say that Minor Elementals are S tier because elementals turn the action economy in your favor. They draw enemy attacks away from you because the low armor class of the methods means that the targets are going to likely get targeted more often, and they only have 11 armor class. So yeah, the enemy's AI in this game will oftentimes target the lowest armor class. That's why Gale always gets hit. So that gives a new target for your spellcasters to get avoid being hit by, and plus the ice ones can create ice surfaces and the mud ones can create a mud surface. So crowd control and spellcasting all in one. But I don't think that's the absolute best summon. The best one actually belongs to the druid, with the Conjure Woodland being. Now, why is this so good? Well, I heard you like summon, so we gave your summon a summon, so you can summon, well, you summon. It has its own version, the Fallen Lover here. So it is also really good because the Dryad here gets spike growth. So you no longer have to hold your concentration on spike growth. You can have this pop it down for you, which is nice because then it can kind of scurry back and stay safe. It can also do a strengthened Shillelagh, makes its Shillelagh deal a lot of extra damage. So yeah, it becomes upwards of 35 damage, which is crazy. It can entangle targets, so can the Woodland be, or the Woodwoad there. It also gets a couple berries there, but the main attack's actually pretty strong on the Dryad. I don't recommend getting it to front line because it only has 22 health, so it goes down really quickly. But you can throw a strength potion here and get some extra effects on some of the summons here. So what we got now is our Woodwoad will do a little extra damage. So it's Twisting Branch up to 24 damage. I don't believe the Dryad actually gets a boost to its damage because it uses its spellcasting modifier, which is higher, but the Woodwoad can get a slight increase to its overall damage, but the Woodwoad's all about using the Entangle spell, so that's something that's nice about it. And then with our methods, they get a slight damage boost as well, so if you really want to maximize damage, throw a Strength Potion down, it's going to benefit the Woodwoad a bit. But the Woodwoad and the Dryad are great because the crowd control they provide is so massive with Spike Growth and the Entangle. He has multiple versions of Entangle too, which is nice because, yeah, you can then grab someone in its place and hold them there for 10 turns. Which is really useful. And then its attacks itself are pretty nice too. So yeah, the Woodland being easily an S tier pick just because, again, it also turns your action economy. It gives you much of needed crowd control, and the damage from it can actually be pretty good too. Next we got DeathWard, however, which is a nice spell. DeathWard's pretty great because it applies a condition so the target, when they get reduced to 0 health points, they stand back up with 1. The Half-Orc and the Shadow Magic Sorcerer have this built in too. But a nice thing too is you can use the Reviving Hands, which will give DeathWard to a target that you revive. So it gives you Revivify. You can apply DeathWard without having to cast the spell, but it's pretty nice. I like having this just as an extra precaution because it lasts until long rest. If you got level 4 spell slots, your cleric may as well cast this on your most important attackers because, yeah, it's able to be lasting until long rest, and it's a nice effect because that basically just gives you an option. Basically, if you get down, you'll stand right back up, which is great. 1 health point can mean the difference between losing a run, so I actually do think DeathWard does provide quite a bit of a benefit because people really like the Half-Orc for this ability, and also the Shadow Magic Sorcerer gets this built in, but I actually do think DeathWard is pretty strong, so I'll put it up into the high A tier because it's just a very valuable spell to have, and you'd rather have it than not have it. But next we'll go with Freedom of Movement. So this can actually be a game changer. If you have a teammate that gets stunned, you can use this on them to save them. It also makes it so difficult terrain won't slow them down. They can't be magically paralyzed or restrained. So this is good on a variety of situations. So you can pop this down. You're going to see there, last until long rest. Great. And then you can go ahead, cast this on Minsk, and then you get the Freedom of Movement. I would actually recommend having a camp caster go around applying this on everyone. It won't protect you from ice if there's a secretly little hidden patch of ice there. It's not going to actually protect you from that, but difficult terrain will no longer slow you down, and ice will slow you down. So this can be useful for just avoiding a lot of situations where you may, need to go through some difficult terrain. The fact that it lasts until long rest is massive, and camp casting is a thing, so you can have a hireling or you can have Gale stick a camp and cast this on everyone. It's actually really good. So I'd say this is another one I'm going to put up in the A tier. DeathWard and Freedom of Movement, with maybe Freedom of Movement being a little bit better because sometimes you just need to get your fighter in front line with them. So yeah, this spell is really useful for just keeping your team buffed up, which buffs are obviously really strong in Baldur's Gate. And next we got Ice Storm. Now I'll admit, this is my favorite level 4 spell because it creates ice surfaces for 2 turns. So huge radius, which is nice. So you can pop down the ice. I unfortunately made myself and Shadowheart slip and go prone. So it just goes to show, I guess, how nice this is, because when a target goes and knocks himself prone, so if they run on ice and end up slipping, you see there we aren't slowed down because we have the Freedom of Movement. But with this, it's going to end the target's turn if they slip and fall on the ice, which is huge. It also breaks concentrations of spellcasters. There's obviously Sleet Storm, which kind of does the same thing, creating the ice surfaces and keeps raining down over 10 turns. This does damage, though, and that's what separates the two, because despite using a higher level spell slot, it doesn't require concentration like Sleet Storm does. And it creates that ice surface guaranteed. The 2d8 plus 46 cold damage is nice. I wish it was all cold damage, but you know, it just makes sense that it's not. Just how D&D works, with Cone of Cold being the level 5 version, which is a little stronger in damage. This is still really good for the crowd control benefits that it bring. And that's kind of a common theme among the level 4 spells, is a lot of them are crowd control. That's why I made my character dressed in pink, because a lot of these are enchantment spells. But this one itself, I actually think this is the best level 4 spell because it does damage and it creates a surface. For a level 4 spell slot, that's pretty good because most of these either do a surface or they do damage, and the damage is one of the best types in the game. I actually think that Ice Storm's a S tier pick. Some people may disagree, but I honestly think that if you can land one of these, it can turn the tides of battle because it's a surface that the enemies can lose their turns on. And in Baldur's Gate 3, the action economy is huge. If your team has more actions than the enemy, you're going to have much more success in terms of combat. And if you can remove their actions by making them slip and fall on the ice, that's less actions and less damage that your team takes to keep your resources, such as health, high. So yeah, I do think Ice Storm is a very powerful spell. Some people may disagree, say it should be an A tier pick, but I think for its value, it ends up being really effective most of the time because of that surface and the damage that it brings. So that's my thoughts. Let me know yours though in the comments. But next we got a spell that actually has been changed, Grasping Vine. Prior to, I think it was patch 3 or 4, this was a full action, and it was not that good. Grasping Vine now has surfaces around it, so you can pop this down. What it does best is you get this entangling vines here, so targets become entangled if they're near it, but it's its own being, and it'll draw attacks. It has 26 health, and with this, it only has a 13 armor class. It is weak to fire damage, but immune to psychic and poison. What's great about this, though, is it can use its grasping pull to pull targets in towards it, so you can go with that, yank them in towards it, and then they become entangled. This is really good, actually, because it only uses a bonus action now, and I know some people just don't like the spell, but it's another summon, and the summon is another crowd control king, so yeah, this makes the Druid a very unstoppable force when it comes to combat, because they get Ice Storm, they get Grasping Vine, they get their summons. Everything about the Druid itself is great, and level 4 is a really good, so when you hit level 7, the Druid gets a huge power spike. I'd have to say that Grasping Vine is a A tier pick. Some people don't like Grasping Vine, but yeah, I may actually put it up somewhere around there. Just because it's a bonus action summon that has 26 health, it can create entanglement, causing enemies to be stuck in place. Depending where you throw this down, it can be a game changer. Despite lasting for 10 turns, have you ever had a combat encounter that lasted for more than 10 turns? Probably not. So it's going to last for entire combat or until it goes down. Next, we got Guardian of Faith. So call forth a Divine Guardian that attacks nearby enemies. It can do 3 attacks before it loses its 60 health, so it does 20 damage on its attacks. It's good, I guess, because with this, it's able to kind of hold off a corridor there. So it can do that Strike of the Guardian there. As you see, 20 damage straight up, and it loses 20 health of its 60. It can draw attacks away from the enemies. It also has some of the coolest looking appearances in the game. So yeah, I think that this is a pretty good one, but it's not as good as obviously we have some more powerful ones here. The Guardian of Faith, it's just a little tricky because it's set in one place and it doesn't have that much movements, or I guess it doesn't move at all, so it's kind of stuck there, and if you end up putting it in a bad place, you get no value out of it. But it can bring a lot of value to the team if you know where to place it. Choke points, doorways, things like that are good options because it'll draw attacks away from your team. Summons in Baldur's Gate 3 are overpowered, so yeah, this is another one that goes right up there with the Grasping Vine. Guardian of Faith and Grasping Vine, 2 very good ones. This one requires a full action, though. It's not a bonus action like Grasping Vine, so I think Grasping Vine is a little better in certain choices, but the Cleric does have a great spell list, and it's just nice to be able to get something like that. And next we got Polymorph. Now, Polymorph is a funny spell more than anything. You can turn a creature into a harmless sheep. So this is funny because you can also have this happen with a wild magic sorcerer. So boof, I love the appearance when they turn into a sheep and then go around falling over. The sheep doesn't have that much health, so you can see they have 3 health on the polymorph creature, so boom, attack it, it removes the polymorph. This is an okay spell. I don't really know, outside of the lols, I don't think that there's much great use of it. It only lasts for 5 turns. If you're going to compare it to another type of spell that works almost similarly, Confusion has ended up being better, so yeah, or you can use Dominate Beast and take a real fearsome animal over this one. Yeah, I don't find that the polymorph spell is that great, to be honest. There may be some instances where it's good, like you can turn someone into a sheep, put it in turn-based mode, pick them up and run, throw them off of a ledge. That's a good choice, but yeah, Polymorph is just I would say C tier. Certain instances it's good, but yeah, let me know your favorite way to use Polymorph in the comments, because I'm sure there's some really funny ways to utilize this. And next we got Wall of Fire, which doesn't do as much damage as a fireball, but you can create a large area of effect crowd control. So you pop this down, targets in the fire will take damage. Electrocute myself there as well. So yeah, that was because it created electrified steam. And then I also had water there, so I took double damage. This is where I got the 8 lightning damage from. It's kind of funny. Sometimes Wall of Fire is nice because it's a form of crowd control as well. It forces the enemies to either jump through it or to run around in a different direction. So Wall of Fire, honestly, not a bad spell. If you're a druid, you can put down an ice surface with Ice Storm, making the enemies fall and slip. And then you can also have a concentration of Wall of Fire to direct them a certain way. And then you also have your bonus action, Grasping Vine, to pull targets in, your ice methods to create ice surfaces, and then your Woodland Being to create spike growth. So yeah, lots of crowd control in the druid. I think the Wall of Fire spell is pretty decent. It's not as good as some people make it out to be. So yeah, good damage, but something that enemies end up working their AI around to avoid, but it can be paired with a lot of other crowd control spells to bring maximum value. I'd have to say this one is a B tier pick. It's not that effective, but it can be something worth using at certain instances. But you also got Stoneskin here. This basically makes so the target takes half damage of all non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. You're going to see a lot of magical damage by the time you get to level 7, so that kind of renders this a little bit less useful. Yeah, some people like this one, kind of like Barkskin. I think that this ends up being a little bit less effective compared to some of the other spells in this game. Most notably Haste, which gives you double your movement speed, 2 bonuses, or plus 2 to armor class, and an extra action. So yeah, Stoneskin's okay, but we do have better options for spells here. So I'd actually have to say that Stoneskin is possibly like a C tier pick. It's just not as good as some of the others. Next up, we got Evard's Black Tentacles, doing a 3d6 bludgeoning damage, turning the area into difficult terrain and smothering creatures within it. It's okay. It's another spell. It's okay. Cool appearances here. Actually, kind of freaky appearances here with that. This applies the condition here while you're on the surface where attack rolls against the affected entity have advantage, while the enemy's attack and dexterity saving throws will have disadvantage. So you pop this down, you're more likely to land things like Fireball and that. You also more likely chance to land some attacks. And it also freaks people out with the appearance on the ground. So that's another nice thing. But yeah, it ends up restraining targets, so you can end up saving on it, but it's difficult terrain. Pretty effective, actually, for just the overall crowd control. I think it's a decent spell overall. Nothing really to complain about here. Not high damage, but that's not really the intention behind it. The damage is a nice bonus. It's the crowd control and the benefits that brings alongside them. I have to say this is another B tier pick. It's not as good as some of the others here, but it's still a decent choice nonetheless. And next we have Fire Shield, which has 2 distinct ways to use this. So you can either do the Fire Shield Chill, which makes it so that attackers will receive a 2 to 16 cold damage to anyone that hits you and take half fire damage. Or you can do the Warming version, which does you take half cold damage and deals 2 to 16 fire damage to anyone that hits you. This is also a spell that you can get pretty early on, and it looks really cool too by coating yourself in the fire there. Yeah, Fire Shield and all the others are pretty nice. It also sheds a light with the Warming one. Resistance to the cold damage is also pretty effective too. Yeah, there's certain points where I'd say that Heat Shield is, or Fire Shield is really nice. And yeah, it's a situational spell. Probably another B tier pick, to be honest. And then finally, we got Otiluke's Resilience Sphere, which can be annoying because this can actually happen with the Wild Magic Sorcerer. So with this spell, you can enclose a target in a sphere of Shimmering Force, blocking all incoming damage and spell effects. So you pop this down, they become stuck within this little sphere here. Well, that's nice. There's better versions, I would say. Movement speed is halved, cannot deal damage or cast spells. There's Sanctuary, a level 1 spell, and then there's also the Globe of Invulnerability later on in the game. And Otiluke's best sphere is actually his Freezing Sphere, which you get at a level 6 spell slot, which is really good. Yeah, you can't apply this on huge targets either. Otiluke's Resilience Sphere probably has some decent uses, but yeah, blocks all incoming damage, which is better obviously than Sanctuary, which you can still get hit with crowd control spells and things like that. Not a bad spell, not an incredible spell either. I'd have to say this one is another B tier pick. So there you have it, folks. There's the best level 4 spell slots in Baldur's Gate 3. Ice Storm, obviously powerful because it does not only damage, but a crowd control surface, and it doesn't require concentration like Sleet Storm. I think Ice Storm is actually a very good spell. Some people may disagree, but I think it's pretty strong. Also, Woodland Being might actually be a little bit better. I might put this one ahead because it can also hold your spike growth concentration. It can entangle with the Woodland Being. You got a lot of extra benefits from this spell. And Minor Elementals as well. It's nice to be able to summon those and bring a little extra options of diverting attacks away from your team, but also applying damage and also surfaces with ice and mud. We also got greater invisibility, great for cheesing the game. Grasping Vine, really useful now that's a bonus action. Guardian of Faith, obviously pretty strong in certain areas. I actually might move this down a little bit because it is kind of tricky to get to work, but if you can get it to work, it's great. Confusion, crowd control, and very underrated spell. Freedom of Movement and DeathWard both can be camp casted and buff up your team quite a bit. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what kind of Baldur's Gate 3 tier list you'd like to see next. Hope you have a great day, and we'll catch you all in the next video.